He went on to explain that the first ship which came winging its way through the dark, moonless night, safe from prying eyes of the merely curious or the hostile, was a mother ship. It was 700 feet in diameter, said Mr. Matthews, 300 feet high, with a center tube 50 feet in diameter. It held 24 small ships, each one from 75 to 100 feet in diameter. None of the ships had windows as we know them, but the crew could obtain a full view on all sides by a device which somewhat resembles television. The ship was of Venusian origin. Mr. Matthews emphasized the fact that all his contacts, both on the set and personally, had been with real, living, material persons, not spirits. He does not hold with mediumship or communication with the dead, for he believes that we can all be in contact with God, the only true Spirit, through the living Christ. He believes that all of us can receive comfort and other help from the Christ, and that only those who study spaceship information in the Bible and seek wisdom from God can ever understand the things of space. Mr. Matthews has here touched upon a point which has proved to be an almost surmountable handicap to many life streams who would otherwise go forward quickly into the light and take their place beside the other disciples in active service. The barrier which individuals place before themselves and which keeps them immersed in psychism is a tendency based upon morbid sentimentalism and the wrong use of the memory function. During the past few years, since the public has become aware of visitors from outer space, the Earth has been literally flooded with messages from so-called space people, most of which proved to be phony. Hundreds of mediums took advantage of the interest in space to pour out endless messages of meaningless drivel, purportedly coming from the space people themselves or from disembodied relatives and friends of the eager listeners. These disembodied ones presumably knew all about spaceship activities, according to their story, which is ridiculous on the face of it. Disembodied entities, until very recently, were confined to the astral plane as long as they had a tendency to waste their time in gossip, which is the proper term for the type of communication in which they indulged. A genuine space person avoids the astral plane as we would avoid a plague. A genuine space person knows that he is making the sacrifice of coming to the earth in order to abolish death on the planet, certainly not to encourage it. Ordinary mediums who seek to contact the astral plane and the disembodied are not used as channels by the space people, no matter what the mediums may say to the contrary. This entire psychic situation was running riot in 1956, but it cleared noticeably in 1957. Mediums today are no longer receiving exciting messages from the astral plane because they can no longer contact disembodied persons. The vibrations which mediums contact today come from thought forms on the physical or astral plane, or from astral shells. The whole psychic lure is waning. This is because of the drastic action taken on the inner planes by the hierarchy in an effort to get the disembodied ready for reincarnation in the New Age. In addition to the house cleaning by Lord Michael, the Aquarian Age fiat has gone forth, which requires that the disembodied study, render service, and spend a certain portion of their time each day in the temples of the violet fire, transmuting their karma and preparing for activity in the new civilization. The unwholesome habit of embodied individuals seeking contact with dead relatives or friends must be ended if people are ever to restore normal contact with their source. It must certainly be ended if death itself is to be abolished on this planet. Attempted communication with the dead is not only distracting to both the embodied and disembodied, but leads to a sense of smug satisfaction which prevents contact with the higher vibrations of the forces of light. There is nothing to be gained by seeking advice from a disembodied person. There is heaven to be gained by seeking advice from the Christ self within each beating heart. Space people, or people from other planets and stars, are much more highly evolved than Earth people. Otherwise, they would not be allowed to come to this planet, because we have trouble enough of our own without importing more from the outside. Therefore, space people with their higher vibratory rate fall into the same evolutionary category as our own masters and adepts who are members of our own spiritual hierarchy. Tesla, being a Venusian, cannot be classified as a disembodied astral entity. He will not be found on the astral plane. If a medium makes a supposed contact with Tesla, the medium is only contacting a thought form hovering in the astral atmosphere, but not the real man, for psychics cannot reach vibrations beyond the astral plane. A person who is overshadowed by an adept, either from this earth or from some other planet, is not in contact with the astral plane. Adepts do not work from that plane. It has come to the attention of this author that certain mediums, much given to lower psychism, have claimed contact with Tesla. This is not correct, and they have contacted only a thought form. Tesla can overshadow his disciples or can communicate telepathically if a definite purpose is being served for all humanity and for the Christ forces. Moreover, he works only with those persons who are already affiliated with hierarchical ashrams established by the forces of light. No adept who is genuine has any time to waste giving trivial messages to trivial people. It is a well-known fact that members of the hierarchy and also space people have spent considerable time contacting officials of all governments on the earth and also scientists and church leaders. They felt duty-bound to do this, but having performed that duty and having met only with hostility, they are now limiting their contacts to those individuals who can assist in some manner in carrying out the divine plan. It has often been remarked in recent months that certain individuals who had excellent contacts with space people now seemingly have lost contact. Exactly the same thing has happened with disciples who have at certain times been in touch with members of the hierarchy for the express purpose of serving as an outpost of consciousness for an ascended being. In a case where an ascended master withdraws from contact with a disciple, or a space person ceases contact, the human being is always at fault. In some manner, the energy expended by the adept has been misused by the one in human embodiment, and withdrawal is always the result. This is not a sign of disfavor. It is a sign that the adept knows that the burden of knowledge is more than the human can bear, and therefore the withdrawal is definitely a favor. Sometimes those who have lost contact with ascended masters or space people make the dreadful mistake of permitting pride to hold sway, and they pretend or fake contacts. This is a pathetic situation, and certainly calls for an application of the dictum that honesty is the best policy. No single individual has a monopoly on the divine plan, and the teachings of the ageless wisdom are available to all. This is an age of freedom, and it is useless to pretend that special knowledge is granted only to special individuals. All knowledge is available to all, but it must be used to uplift all humanity, not to build a personal ivory tower of pride and prejudice. The divine plan will emerge among the people, the ordinary man in the street, the housewife, the shop, and the office workers. It will most assuredly not emerge as a super government or as another church. It will not emerge among scientists who are slaves to the military, nor will it emerge among professors and teachers who are likewise enslaved by a barbaric educational system that is completely controlled by the forces of darkness. Therefore, the space people are only interested in contacting free souls, individuals who can speak, write, and lecture without fear, persons who understand that those who snicker and sneer, those who shout and threaten, are merely tools for the dark forces. The dark forces have been practicing their subtle tyranny for millions of years, but they have been especially successful since newspapers became commonplace.